Good evening. This is Pine Needles, and welcome to LOTRO Players News, where we take a look at the latest news in LOTRO, and here at LOTRO Players. And tonight we have with us Draculetta,
Hey, everybody.
Ethelros.
Hey,
Oh, you're really excited today, aren't you?
as much as I always am.
Right. Draxwolf
Hello.
and Dang.
Hey, everybody.
And our special guest for tonight is Acacia Songweaver. Oh boy, Acacia Songweaver.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
Did a right
Hello.
rehearsal.
You were nearly there, Pine Leaf. So yeah, thank you, by the way, and hello, everyone.
All right, before the show, Acacia was actually congratulating Pineleaf on getting the pronunciation right, and then now when the show starts, he gets it wrong. Just like to point that out.
thank you, Aunt Dane, for pointing that out. Nice.
Yes, I can. I can do that. I have been in LOTRO for like nearly 7 years now. I started right after launch, so I think I've been in LOTRO for 6 years, maybe 6.5 years. I don't know, a long time at least. I basically play on Laurelin. I'm from Norway, so that's of course where I started on. I think it was late 2007. So yeah, the Shades have been quite active ever since then. So you could say that yeah, it's a long-lived band. Still quite active, but not as just before. But we enjoy every time we, gather up and play music. Yeah. So
All right.
that's basically where I started.
They're pretty much one of the first bands that came along, weren't they?
Yeah, there wasn't really many bands around, not on Lorleen at least, because I remember there was another band called Mahoney Brothers, which basically played the same solo tune with different instruments. There were like 5, 6 people. The character, they had 6 characters looking all the same, so it was really weird. Really, but we and I got inspired of them actually. I thought it was pretty cool, but my interest came very properly when the multi-sync functionality came in LOTRO, which I think was with book 11 with Defenders of Eriador or something like that. Then they introduced the multi-sync functionality, which was a little bit after the launch. So then I came up with the idea with Alberga we should start a band. So we did, and I was focusing a lot on my own songs because I thought that would be nice to try something that was original or quite unique that no one else did. So I started with making ABC files, which was quite complicated. I was trying to construct the song as a real song, have a play, what's it called? Bass line, and sustain sound with flute and lutes, and just make the arrangement a little bit exciting. And I think that was pretty new to people. So we got lots of attention when we started to play around. And I remember we immediately got attention from the community stuff people, like Laurelin was is a European server which was underneath Codemasters before the merge with Turbine. So the community manager called Satine, she was quite supportive regards to our band. So she came at our concerts and such. So we felt like kind of celebrities for a while. So I mean, it was very rewarding, and it was very motivating for us to continue. So I got really hooked on this, and And it escalated. We were interviewed into massively.com, which is a quite large MMO magazine, online magazine. And we were at different podcasts, and we got lots of attention. I think this music system was also quite new. I don't think it's any other game that has something similar. So it was very new at that time, and I also think that Shades was also one of the first band that introduced the concert format in LOTRO with the music and stories and lyrics and all these kind of things. So I think we were kind of I don't know the English word, but pioneers in when it comes to the music system and what you could achieve with the music system. So I'm quite proud of what I did back then, and I'm also very proud of the people in the Shades, because it's more or less the same people still in the Shade as back in 2007.
Wow.
So we have stick together. It was very fun, and but of course it's like crazy a period. So I didn't have a lot really. I had my life in Middle Earth, but it was for me. It was not only a game, because you have to remember that I use my own songs in the game. So for me it was some kind of an arena or a stage to present my own music. So and I got lots of feedback, and it was very rewarding for me. So that's why I sort of got so very into this. But it has been a very fun adventure and a journey with the Shades and the music system and everything. Still quite enjoy it, and I also like to see other bands and such too. And I know we have inspired others to start music now and such. I know Grimrock from Chosen Few, he said that he started Chosen Few because of the Shades. And that's kind of fun to hear, that we also have been able to inspire others to do the things that we do now. So that's basically what I have been done in LOTRO. Yeah.
All right.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now we'll get into our news for this week, and our story for this week is that we're going to be continuing our discussion on Update 13, because there was a second Bull Roarer build, and Etheros, you posted the notes on the site?
Yeah, I did. I'm actually looking at the what I wrote.
All right, yeah, the first thing you talked about, the might, will, and vitality no longer contributing to physical tactical mitigations.
Yeah, and that is really the biggest change they've made for this set of notes, and really this year, or even since Helm's Deep, in terms of how wide an effect this has. Because at the moment, at least on live, pretty much everybody near or at level cap will have cap mitigations, whether they're actually aiming to do it or not. That's just how much stats you're getting off them and how easy it is to do. What this change does is, those three stats no longer do it, meaning that light armors, which used to be able to cap tactical mitigations just from having a lots of will have to work via other methods. So pieces of allies, relics, or things you attach to the weapons, I can't remember their names, virtues especially, that sort of thing. In general, it's going to be a lot harder to get up to those higher mitigations than it used to.
Yes, but seeing that some characters were a little bit bordering on the can't be touched by any enemy side, you can understand.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and as a result, this has made combat, at least on Borora, I said in the thread, it was, or article, it was very much harder, but it kind of varies, depends on what kind of enemies you're fighting. As I noted, or other people have noted, the underground Isengard area with the Urukai, those are very tough in general. I know because I recognize the type of mob, the moves they use, damage they do especially is very reminiscent to me of old Rise of Isengard mobs that were even tough to kill then. So I think it can kind of vary depending on what you're doing, but in general, this has made combat harder.
Okay, so there.
Helm's Deep, you're getting a huge amount of primary stat and a huge amount of vitality, and that gives you a lot of morale and a lot of mitigations, and that's part of I'd say about 30 to 40% of the reason that we are so overpowered at the cap now, because the stats are just so bloated to a huge extent.
So I went and checked on physical mitigation was coming from vitality, and out of his 14,000 physical mitigation, 11,000 of that is coming from vitality right now.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Just to give you an idea.
Worse, really. I found for my Lawmaster, he went from 40%, over 40% capped, to about just under 20%. And it's very hard to get tactical mitigation otherwise. So yeah, the change is huge.
All right, that'll make things a little bit more challenging. Also,
there was a comment by Ginger addressing some of these points, because again, people have pointed out that the change like this, it is incredibly hard to get cap mitigations now. Not so much for physical mitigation, because you can get that just by stacking a lot of armor, because you obviously get 80% of your armor value, it goes to physical, and then 10% to tactical. The tactical is the main issue, because I know some wardens have reported having about 20 odd percent. That isn't nearly enough for a tank, not even remotely. And that's the key issue there. Some have suggested putting it back on vitality, because obviously a lot of classes rely on that. Ginger actually responded, and he seemed to have a different opinion on that. He's seeing that he, obviously, aside from just giving it a try and see what people think first before getting a extreme reaction, he actually thinks it'd be better to have might and will have the mitigations back and leave vitality out, which is an interesting perspective. I didn't actually consider it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I always wondered, ever since they started, it seems like vitality is important to everybody. And no matter what your primary stat is, if you're looking for something else, don't worry about fate, don't worry about anything else, just do vitality. That's been the rule for the last couple of updates, major updates.
Well, one of the problems is that if it went to might and will, then wardens will have...
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, burglars and hunters are the same way.
Which makes it, in a way, kind of worse for them, wardens especially, since they are meant to be a tank, and yet they don't get the armor value boost that, say, champions, captains, and guardians would.
Right. Now, let's see. Come update 13, LOTRO will have a new client and downloader, Akamai Net Session. Has anyone ever used this?
I haven't used it, but I've been following some of the conversation, and Krell just showed up in the chat room. He's been really following the conversation because DDO went to use this in their last update, and there was a lot of concern about it because I think the biggest concern was it was used for the download, but they also thought that they should use it for subsequent client. For example, if you deleted a file manually out of your directory, this tool, this Akamai client tool, would recognize that it was deleted and re-download it for you. So in order to keep it running on your computer after you had initially downloaded the LOTRO client, they added something into the launcher that would require this client to be on your computer every time you launch the launcher. So if it wasn't, it would tell you to re-download it. And that was causing a lot of issues with people that wanted to just delete it after they were done using it the initial time. And also there was something to do with the end-user license agreement. I'm not exactly sure what was going on there, but I guess the third concern was this client can also be used as a peer-to-peer uploading client, uploading and downloading, but peer-to-peer part of it is uploading, which means you don't really know what it's doing on your computer. It could be sharing files that you don't give it permission to share. You know, it could be with other people who have this client installed. So, but it does sound like they've actually addressed most of those concerns prior to using it for Lord of the Rings Online. And thank you to the DDO community for hammering on Turbine to get some of this stuff fixed.
Very well. And now, apparently they had made some shout changes in the first build. Actually, I think I noticed a couple of weird shouts when I was in the first build. Apparently, these have been removed, and they went back to the previous ones because I don't think anybody liked them.
Yeah, thank goodness.
Because I play a Lawmaster, I don't think I experienced any of these shouts, because Lawmasters don't shout, they just throw fire. Can you explain like how these shouts kind of work? Were they different depending on what like region you chose to come from? Like Gondorians would have a Gondorian shout, and Rohirrim would have a Rohirrim shout, or was it just like a race of man would have a generic one of those?
I have no idea. It was weird though.
No, I think it's just that the shouts, because currently on live, I believe it's based on race.
Not really. I don't think so.
I don't
race.
think so.
Oh yeah, yes, race it is. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, yeah,
race.
race, but not where you're from.
Currently, dwarves are the only ones that have like a vocal shout, and people like that one. That's part of the reason that people play them, because they have a nice, Baruch Khazad type thing. I'm not actually opposed to having other races and regions having them. Obviously, it depends on how good quality the yell is, which is going to be hard for them to do because there's always going to be some group that don't like them and would rather have a generic annoying yell. Really, the only upside to that is having it as an option or something like that, like a toggle. You can have it generic shouts versus, just the actual calls.
Trouble is some toggles. If you have too many toggles, that means you have code sitting there to do both options, and that means you're bloating the software. So, something like that, I think they normally try to avoid having toggles on it for stuff like that.
Yeah, that seems to be the general opinion from Turbine on different things, like in regards to options.
Yes. Now, also for tasks, they've removed the maximum level, so that means that if you're 95 and wanted to turn in a level 20 task for rep, then you can do it after Update 13 comes out.
Mm-hmm.
And right now, there's a very, very narrow band for turning in tasks in many areas.
Yeah.
I can understand. I think it's a while ago when they introduced these, but I think the original reason for having a maximum was so that people, level cats, wouldn't just run into lobby areas and steamroll all the mobs trying to get them done. I suppose at this point they've decided that, it's not going to happen like that now. It's too far gone, and players are probably, hopefully, more mature than that. So I think, they probably seem confident enough to do it, and seems good to me. A lot of people seem happy about this.
And in some areas, how that works out. The actual quest level would be higher than what the tasks would end at, and so you'd actually still have quests in an area that were higher level than where the tasks would end in some of the places, just because of all the traveling.
Yeah, that's always been a real annoying one. It's like, for example, I have a character that's questing and I think there might be one task that I'm eligible for, all the others are out leveled. Of course, it's moot with that character because that character's already finished the maximum task level and has kindred with him, so I have no reason to do tasks at the moment. But what if you didn't have that situation? All right. Components for first stage legendary items will now drop in T3 skirmishes, as well as classic raid instances, and I believe also, that's not mentioned in the article, as platinum drops in epic battles.
I haven't heard them mention that. It could be true, but I haven't heard anything either way with regards to epic battles.
Okay.
I know they haven't really clarified the tier 3 skirmishes thing either, whether it's just for raids or whether any kind of tier 3 thing it works for. So at this point, we just assume that it is all types.
But I suspect that it would be that the odds of getting one in a solo skirmish would be rare. I don't know what the odds are compared to, say, a Starlit Crystal dropping.
They never give those numbers, so we'll never know.
Yeah, we'll never know, of course. But I'm sure that we'll start to hear numbers when the drops actually happen after it comes out. But that means running tier 3 skirmishes, and tier 3 skirmishes between mitigations and the increase in morale and possibly other stats in the mobs there. Tier 3 skirmishes, at least solo ones, were a little tougher, though, and
that one, I've lost my train of thought. Yeah, those two we did. Yeah. low, my self-healing is just super high with Waterlore. I can heal anything they throw at me. It was like that even before Helm's Deep. Rise of Rohan, I could do it.
And
Ever since they
that's
gates it.
I don't know how you had, because I always had trouble using water lore, so I don't know how it was so overpowering for
Use
you.
it every time it comes off cooldown. That's how you do it. It's really not terribly difficult when you get into the hang of hitting that button every time.
I thought it had. I always felt like it had some sort of induction time that when the mobs are smacking on you, it's.
Yeah, it's I mean, with Lore Masters now, the inductions they've added different traits, so you can reduce the inductions. With the induction so low as it is now, it's really easy to get the skill off.
All right. Okie dokie. Yeah, I think All right. As for the thing with Tier 3 skirmishes, Yeah, I think I saw in another post well before. It could be they changed their mind since it wasn't in the patch notes. The thing about the platinum drop in epic battles, but I guess maybe not, because it looks like it didn't make it into the patch notes.
Yep.
But I would have thought that they would have wanted to encourage people to do epic battles so that a chance of dropping it in epic battles would have been logical.
Apparently not, Pineleaf. They don't want you to do epic battles because Dracula paid them.
That's right. They got my check. Money well spent.
And they listened, yeah. For a change.
Now, did this check include a bribe to them to ignore the fact you must be an active participant in the game, but you have to not have any bad rep, so to speak, from strikes against you and things like that. You have to be able to abide by an NDA, and you can't be on a news show.
It says active for at least the previous 6 months. So does that mean like just logging in once in the previous 6 months, or does that mean being active?
If you have a botanical name. All right, so.
That's right.
All right, so obviously everyone here, well, except for Akazia, is not eligible for the Players' Council.
So don't nominate us.
Yes.
If we were considered eligible, would any of you have decided to maybe apply for it?
I used to be in the mind of wanting to apply for it, but in recent times they've been open enough because of the player council that I don't feel like that I would need to be involved, I guess, because I feel like that they're already open enough for me to know what I want to know, I guess, and be able to influence with feedback and stuff like that. So that's my 2 cents.
Mm-hmm. Anyone else?
Well, I thought about it. Sorry, Pineley. I thought about it the first time around. That was before I was on here, but I didn't apply then. So, and I think I probably still would.
I would not. No, I would not do it. It just doesn't sound appealing to me. It sounds like a lot of work. It doesn't sound like a lot of fun, and it sounds like a lot of pain. But that doesn't mean you can't apply for it.
As glamorous as he made it sound. Yeah, I wouldn't apply for it either, partly because I think it's just so much easier being on the outside looking in than being in it, knowing certain things that you can't tell people, and maybe, being in that discussion. And also because I wouldn't trust myself being able to give that kind of critical input.
I think that's the reason why they didn't want the press to be in there, is because they thought the risk would be too high.
Well,
because the temptation is in there and letting something slip.
It's not that I don't trust myself to keep it quiet. It's I don't trust myself to act in the interests of every, the whole community as a whole, kind of thing.
Well,
and
that's why
just recent experiences on the forums that I don't trust myself doing. So yeah. I think I'm safer on the outside talking about crap, and people can ignore me if they choose to.
Yeah. Okay. All right. As for my own opinion on the matter, I think my schedule this year is busy enough as it is that adding the council on top of it would probably have pushed it over the top, so to speak.
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems a couple people in the chat room are interested in getting on the council, but it seems the majority would not want to be. So,
Which is another
Yeah.
question, really. Oh, sorry.
go ahead, Atharos.
Right, I thought Kit was going to say something, but I suppose that's another question: is anyone going to have anyone they thought of recommending? Because I know that's something they've encouraged to do this time, more so than last time, I think.
I'm going to say yes, but I want to note this is something that I said before we started the show. The post that talks about how to recommend somebody or nominate somebody, I think is the wording they use, is not very clear. They basically use the same verbiage for nominating somebody as they would for somebody applying, which doesn't really make a lot of sense to me because I don't know it. I don't know that much about. I don't know their home address. I don't know the names of all their characters. You know,
Their
I don't
real
know.
name.
Yeah, I don't know all of that stuff. But so I think just to note, if you want to nominate somebody, I think there's only a few things that they actually really need to know. You probably don't have to fill out the entire thing.
So I would suspect, for example, like Russia's outside the coverage of this game, so I don't think members from there would be accepted.
But they
I think
have
that's kind of a given.
LOTRO in Russia, so it's a confusing. Anyway.
They did say that it would be easier if you were able to speak at least a little bit of English because that's how they're going to communicate with everybody.
Yeah, that is one of
Yeah.
their key things is speaking English, but that doesn't
Yeah,
necessarily
if-
mean country. So
Right, yes, because if you can't speak or write in English, then you can't communicate with the rest of the council, and if you can't communicate with the rest of the council, you're not going to be able to do much in the way of input.
that's right.
But you probably won't be
That's
listening to this show either.
Yes, it is. Store sales this week. Free sample of the week through the 27th is Skill and Slayer Deed Boost. You get one of those, and that is one per account. As always, use the code SKILL8, SKILL8, to get your Skill and Slayer Deed Boost. It is also a loot box. And we also have 25% off Stat Tomes, the Dusky Nimblefoot Goat, Select XP Boost, and Legacy slots. So once again, it is another sale this week.
It's kind of a
Yeah.
mixed bag. There's not really a theme with this one.
No, there's
Usually
not.
like a theme. The Skill and Slayer Deeds, because they're just taking a lot longer to grind than Slayer Deeds.
Well, you're not going to run out and get that goat?
No.
No. All right, let's go to the site news then. We'll begin with LOTRO Video Highlights Beautiful Middle Earth. Landing.
There's amazing shot in here. They have the most amazing time lapse I think I've ever seen of any game, and it is the going from nighttime in Evandim, looking out over the lake, and it changing into an amazing sunrise with fantastic music that backs it up perfectly. And the second that the sun hits forth, it has a small like jump in the music, and then when the sun comes up fully, there's the full orchestra that comes in, and it's amazing. I absolutely love this video. It's just watch it just for the time lapse. Plus, they have plenty of other great, fantastic shots of LOTRO. This is one of my favorite videos so far, and video highlights for sure.
Thank you. And we did also had our LOTRO Players Adventures episode 7 posted, Deadly Shadows, and it's called Deadly Shadows because the shadowing of Fornost is deadly.
Very much so.
Yep. And dang, you finally finished your Helm's Deep series, 105 episodes.
Yes, thankfully. It took forever. It took, let's see here, over 3 months of releasing this thing. Because it was 105
yes, you're
episodes.
Now almost old as, yes, you're old as that minstrel now, aren't you?
Yeah, I don't know about that, Pineleaf, and I have a name, it's Glewine. Come on.
You had to give him the opening, didn't you, Pinely? You just had to.
Yes, I had to give him the
You
opening.
sure did.
Very well. And we have some fan fiction from Odario, The Tale of the Red Maid. And looks like it's a comic series going through book 2 of the epic, where you have The Tale of the Red Maid.
Yeah, there's some great screenshots, high quality stuff, and they put through a lot of the same chat that goes through there. It's a fantastic job.
All right, and we have the Rangers Kickstarter. Oh no, we need more Rangers now? Oh, don't tell me the great company needs a Kickstarter.
Well, they're not going to make any progress on their own, are they?
That's right. This is the new quest line for LOTRO is helping the Rangers. No, this is actually a great Kickstarter project that has been in the works for a while now, and it's just now getting to Kickstarter. They've been in pre-production and already shot some scenes and some various things, and now they're actually in shooting through the film, and they need your help. They're trying to raise $50,000, I believe, is what their overall goal is, and then they have better goals moving forward beyond that. But it's a fantastic. It's going to be a fantastic series, almost guaranteed, because it's done by the same people who did the amazing film, which is known as Rise of the Fellowship, which we talked about earlier this year. And it's done by the same director. There's a lot of the same people involved. There's even people from Born of Hope, which I don't know if you guys saw that web series, but it was a fantastic one as well, that involved Aragorn's father and going through that storyline, and it was fantastic. And yeah, I hope that everyone donates. If you have any money that you can spare, donate to this, because it's an amazing project and definitely should happen because it looks amazing.
Very well. Any other comments on the Rangers?
The preview looks really good. They've actually
yeah.
got, I don't remember if it's linked on the Kickstarter or not. I think it probably is. But I've seen it tweeted out before, and it looks really fun. I think that they're really looking to do a quality job on this. And he actually goes into several different directions on this. About every paragraph kind of takes a little turn here and there. But this is one that I wanted to actually read because it has to do with community involvement and the influence of those who kind of rise to a higher level in community. And it kind of hits a little bit close to home for those of us who do this podcast and contribute to the site. He says, I read a forum post recently in which someone thought that there was a burden of responsibility upon high-profile community participants or websites. To a degree, I believe they are right, although I think it is very dependent upon what the said individual or site does within the community. Providing guides, sharing experiences, or collating data is usually benign and neutral, but providing news or opinion is more complex and possibly does require a degree of responsibility and self-moderation. However, readers of specific sites or followers of certain individuals also have a duty to exercise their own common sense. It is a mistake to put people on pedestals. And I just think this is really interesting. This kind of came in the wake of what we talked about last week when Tales of Arda decided to stop playing Lord of the Rings online. And there was some assertions that she had a whole lot of influence over people purchasing the Helm's Deep expansion. And so without getting too much into that, because that was a whole side conversation, I thought it was interesting to talk about a little bit about how much influence certain members of the community actually have on others, and this whole notion of putting folks on a pedestal, because none of us are professionally trained journalists, and yet we have a weekly show where we get to express our opinions, possibly through no fault of our own, even guide and influence other people's opinions on certain subjects within the game. So have you guys found that you had to moderate what you say as LOTRO Players has kind of grown in importance over the last year? Or what has your experience with this been?
I don't know if I can go first, I don't know if it's moderate, but more phrasing it in the right way. I don't, in other words, I don't just give my opinion the second it happens, I guess. I try to think it over and make sure that that really is my opinion before I go what I say. That could be, not the best thing to have happen. And so I think that I have found myself thinking a little bit more before I say things, but I don't think I moderate what I say, if that makes sense.
For me, on the podcast itself, there are a large number of things I just either don't talk about at all, or I talk as little about as possible. Most of it is just because I don't think it's appropriate for this podcast, and it'll affect the podcast more than it'll affect me if I say those sort of things. So especially because it's just a personal thing. You say your opinion, that's it. The forums I've had problems with in the past where I get too invested in things and I say things like probably shouldn't. I have tried to, especially after we started doing the podcast, try to be more... I can't think of the word for it, but yeah, just be less full-on than I used to be. It's kind of had trouble with that. But yeah, generally, I try and tone down what I'm saying or thinking. Unless I'm really, really passionate about that subject, then I'll try and be polite, but I will not pretend to only like something.
From me, so that's been kind of an interesting thing to watch. Anybody else? Pine Leaf?
That was more of an invitation.
I've always been
Pine Leaf.
I've always been conservative in sharing opinions, I think, so I don't think that's changed much.
We need to have a podcast called The Real Pine Leaf.
Giving
the real opinions behind the shield and the spear. What really goes on in Pine Leaf's mind.
Draculetta?
Yeah, I think I would have to agree with Anding too. I don't think I moderate myself, but I do kind of take a step back and I think, okay, if I say this, how is it going to affect, LOTRO players? Do I really want to say this? So I used to just jump off the cliff and just, if I didn't like something, I would just epic battles withstanding. I can't withhold my hatred for those, but that's kind of like the running joke now though. So, but yeah, I think I have changed how I do things a lot since all this.
Well, here's my main thing is if I just get angry at everything the second it happens and then over time realize, well, it's not that bad, I don't think people are going to listen to me as much. But if I get angry at the things... Seriously. Yeah, if I get angry at the things that really should make you angry and that you really should fight for in the community, then I think that has a lot more impact, in my opinion anyway.
Yeah, for me it's what's appropriate to be strongly talking about and what isn't, when it's called for, when it isn't.
Yeah.
Kazuya, you don't contribute as often as the rest of us do to LOTRO players per se, but you do have a fairly high profile within the community. Do you have an opinion on this?
Yeah, well, I agree. I try to... I mean, it's nothing wrong to have opinions about things. Absolutely not. And I do not moderate myself too much, actually. Because if there's something I'm very passionate about, I do tell my opinion about it. But again, I guess I'm a little bit different kind of player than... the players you were talking about, because I'm not very much into the type of game playing and such. I'm a role player, so it's kind of different that way. The only opinions I can have is about lore, and such, and discussing role playing and these kind of things, and that's something I'm very passionate about, and I don't think that sort of will ruin something, if you know what I mean. But of course, I do or have a certain high profile. So yes, it's a natural thing that I try to step back a little bit because I don't want to be, I don't know, I try to be neutral. So I guess without actually have thinking about it too much, I do think I'm careful with what I'm saying anyway. So yeah, that's basically it is.
I do like, Krell from the chat asked a good question, I think. Do you give a more unfiltered opinion elsewhere than LOTRO Players News? Me personally, I don't think so. Well, actually, probably the opposite when I write, because then I have even more time to think about what I'm saying. So,
I think
I don't know.
Brooks kind of nailed it for me in that, in like private conversations with, I know, especially with Andang, Drak sometimes, and Brax too, those kind of conversations, and maybe the after show a bit too, I'm a lot more open with what I think about certain things than I would in public. But I think that's just a given for any kind of place or environment, really.
Yeah, we could do a whole thing on the after show, because I was thinking about that the other day too. It seems so much more freeing to do that, even though we know it's still going to possibly be recorded and put out there. Why is that? I don't understand.
It's my trap.
You just have to trust Andang to know what to actually keep, and it's usually pretty funny or interesting to think about. This has kind of been leading up to a while. It kind of started, I think, a bit before Tales of Ada announced she was stopping her LOTRO stuff. But yeah, this kind of conversation be cropping up in other places. I know we had the discussion last week a bit, but we haven't really had a full-on discussion about community in general, at least on this podcast. So I thought it was about time we kind of just not opened that door and just went through and talked about it as thoroughly as possible. So the first question I came up with, these are more addressed to people personally, not about the whole community as a whole. So the first question is involvement in a game's online community ultimately beneficial or destructive to you personally, not to the community?
I think that it's been nothing but beneficial, and this is partly because, I'm not just involved on LOTRO Players. I actually started on my YouTube channel, and I'm probably going to get a lot of negative comments now, but honestly, I get hardly any negative comments on my YouTube channel. And when I do, it's usually someone that either admits that they don't play LOTRO or something like that. And so for me personally, I've been able to interact a lot more in a positive way and realize just how good LOTRO's community is. And I think if LOTRO's in another game where the community might not be as great, I think that it would be a little bit different. But I think with LOTRO, where we have this fantastic community, I think that it is definitely a benefit to be very involved in the community.
Mm-hmm. Brax?
I think that if I'm answering for myself personally, I would say it has been ultimately beneficial. And that's mostly because, well, a couple reasons. The first reason is it has taught me something, and it has taught me what we talked about earlier, to kind of take a step back, count to 10, watch all of the arguments come out kind of out of the woodwork and analyze them. So it put a lot of information in front of me, but it's also taught me to be patient with that information and not react right off the bat to something possibly muted with what you share. You could find that it's somewhat of a destructive experience because of the way people react to that type of behavior. I don't want to say it's bad behavior, but if you say something that you're ultimately going to have to go back on because maybe you formulated your opinion too early, that may if you do that enough times, that's going to eventually eat away at your psyche, I would think.
Yeah.
Drak? Assuming he's here.
I am, but I was AFK, so I have no idea what we're talking about. Sorry.
We are on the first question of the question of the week, which is involvement in a game's online community ultimately beneficial or destructive to you personally?
Wow, that's a really tough question.
It's the idea.
Yeah. I know it can be both. I know a lot of the times I'll go on the official forums and I just have to like log out of them. I can't take it because it's either it's kind of like it's bipolar. People are either like, this is like the best game ever, or then it's like, this game sucks, it's horrible. You're like killing.
Day, I will elect not to, but my feelings are very similar to that.
Yeah, and from conversations I've had with Athelros about that very thing, I know that the forums, and especially the unofficial forums, can be just if you spend a lot of time on the forums or you spend a lot of time on the unofficial forums in the places where people are complaining particularly about things that they haven't experienced yet or don't know about yet before the beta comes out and things like that, it can really tear down your enthusiasm and your excitement into basically turn into exactly what they're doing, and their unhappiness, even if you might be happy about the thing that they're talking about before you went into it, and it can really tear you down by reading negativity. And so that's my 2 cents.
Yeah.
Pineleaf?
Well, first off, concerning the official forums, all I generally do there is read the either official posts or sometimes I might read things in the skirmish area, see what's discussing in that area on occasion. I don't read too much outside of those areas because as the people pointed, it can get rather sad sometimes reading in those other areas where I feel like that in general half the posts are about their latest doom and gloom prediction for LOTRO.
Yeah, exactly.
So I don't think
hot button topic, yeah.
Yes. Now, if there is someone asking a question for information that's something that I think I could provide the answer to, then I may answer to that. But normally, I don't post. If you check the number of posts I've made on the forums, I will be surprised if it's over 30.
I'd be surprised if mine's over 10, to be honest. It's really sad.
Mine's probably higher than I'd like to admit.
Yeah, so I have a pretty low posting rate there. Most of the stuff that I have posted is either CSTM or LOTRO Players News, and that's it.
Yeah, the chat room's now talking about how GLFF can be a very scary place at times, which, depending on servers and depending on the times of day and things like that, and what news has just been announced, GLFF can be a very scary place.
Oh yeah, I tend to not read it.
I usually try to, especially when I log in, I usually go over to that tab just to see what's going on, and then I'll usually go back to just playing the game.
Maybe it was my time zone, but GLFF was normally fine for me. I mean, you get the occasional complaining or argument, but for the most part, it's okay.
On Landerville, it is for sure. On Imladris, that wasn't always the case, but on Landerville, it definitely has been a lot better experience.
Acacia, I don't believe you've gone yet.
Yeah, I have to admit that I'm not that involved with the online community that much because I have just chosen to be involved in the in-game community, which is a totally different thing. I mean, online community and forums and such, I think it's a little bit two-sided. Of course, it's beneficial on certain areas, but me as a role player and a person that really likes and such, I have been into some quite nasty discussions and such on forums and such, which have been putting me off a little bit sometimes. And so I have rather, stayed in game to experience things there instead of reading what everyone thinks and have an opinion about on the forums. So for me, it has been a little bit two-sided during the years. So I'm not that involved on the forums and such, not on the official, the LOTRO forums and such. But to looking for informations and guides and such is it's like to whine about stuff just of the sake to whine. But it's yeah. So yeah, but I don't know, maybe a little bit of both.
Jeff in the chat room brings up a really good point. He says we also have to remember that the community is more than just the forums.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And for me, I mean, Andang's like kind of alluded to that I spend a lot of time on the forums, probably a lot more than I actually should. Part of it is just because I'm trying to find dev posts and all that, but the other, I'm just kind of, you could say I'm addicted to going there and seeing what people think and responding to when I actually shouldn't and saying things I shouldn't. In that way, I would say it's kind of negatively affected me and that I've become a bit less tolerant of certain views than I otherwise would have been. Maybe it's from seeing them come up over and over and over, or maybe it's just being in that atmosphere too long, it kind of changes you. But I've definitely noticed that kind of effect on me, at least generally, on the forums. I've tried to keep it up with the podcast as much as possible.
Delicate asks, are you Eeyore on the forums too?
You could say I'm a slightly passive-aggressive Eeyore. Yeah, that's one thing. I think the other thing I would note in terms of negative is the dispelling the illusion. And I think that's a huge thing for me, is that before I got involved in this online community thing, on the forums and everything, I was pretty much ignorant of the greater game, or at least all this politics kind of thing. I don't know if we would call it that, but that sort of debates and upcoming changes and things like that. I used to just play the game, log in, play it, and log out. I was happy with that, and that's all I needed to know. That's all I cared to know.
Yes.
And since I've gotten involved in this, there's lots of the seedy underbelly, you could call it, of LOTRO, and all these things that I otherwise would have been ignorant of. I'd perhaps rather not know. But on the other hand, it's something you kind of need to know, maybe. And on that front, I would say it's kind of impacted me in a bad way and also in a good way. Kind of a double-edged sword.
That's the problem is about anything. Get too deep into anything, you see the politics, and yes, I can see how that can jade you sometimes.
Yeah.
In just about anything, not just in games.
Yeah, whenever I'm upset about something news related, Brannick always says, well, see, that's why I don't even pay attention to any of the news or anything, because then I can just complain when it goes live and not have to worry about it before it gets there, because a lot of times stuff won't even make it there. So he always tells me, see, you don't need to worry about it.
I would say it's overwhelmingly positive generally because, I mean, for one thing, I've met a whole lot of good people while doing this thing. Obviously, everyone on the podcast, people I've talked to in the online community, via Twitter, via the forums, there are still a lot of good people on the forums who can be, polite and pleasant most of the time.
Yeah.
And obviously in game too, it's just, yeah, there is that negative side, which I mentioned, but on the whole, I would say it is worth it. It's just something to bear in mind. Okay, unless anyone has anything else to add on that question.
I think we're good.
Okay, the next question is, after your own experiences getting involved in this online community to whatever extent you have, do you even remotely regret it? And even if you don't or not, if you were given the opportunity, what, if anything, would you do differently?
I remember in the beginning I was very active on the forum. I was joining the discussion and I was debating all the time and I was angry all the time. So I think I would recommend actually new players to focus on the game a little bit first before they get involved into joining forums to discuss things or such. Of course, forum is good to ask questions if you are new about this and that, but I don't know. I think it's a little bit two-sided, because when I started to play the game, the forum is a great help, of course, if you're wondering about something. But if you're again, as a role player, if I'm wondering something about the lore, there were so many that sort of started a huge debate about something. So it really, really put me off in the beginning. But I mean, other things maybe it could be very beneficial for new ones to join, I think. But that's my personal experience. I just wish I were playing the game a little bit before I asked lots of questions about lore and role playing and such. But it's very subjective. Everything, people have different opinions about it, and maybe I was unlucky when I started to get involved. But there's much positive things too, so it's a little bit two-sided.
Yeah. From reading the show notes, I actually forgot a section I was meant to add, which is we actually had a couple of people send in emails or comments answering these questions. I probably should have mentioned that before we moved on to the second one. So, sorry for that. Flosin, I've lost track now. Flosin did answer the first question, and he says, I tend to like fan sites over forums. They seem to be more positive or constructive criticism. I read the LOTRO forum but get depressed 3/4 of the first page. By then, it's people whining and not adding anything good to the topic. Fan sites will bring up issues but find a middle ground to help. Does that sound something you could agree or empathize with?
Oh, definitely.
Probably depends on the fan site, because I think there's some fan sites that make the forums look like a rosy picture.
Yes.
But I suppose for those, the fan part of it is debatable.
Yeah, okay, you got a point there.
Yeah, kind of. We also have a answer on the first from Jason, and he has a whole paragraph here. I'll go through it, but you can feel free to ignore me. He says, I would have to say it's beneficial based on his own experience with another MMO, Star Wars The Old Republic. He started a podcast, UtiniCast, with some friends from WoW, and they built a site and guild around it. They're still going more than 2 years later, mainly due to having met so many amazing people through the podcast, both listeners who send them feedback and players who've chosen to join the guilds. One key reason for this is being such a positive experience is that they've tried to be optimistic throughout it. It's too easy to fall into negativity, bashing the game, and that will ultimately be destructive. And for me, I think possibly me more than anyone else, I think, at least talking to Andang about it, I have kind of been on the knife edge a lot of times over the past few months, especially with the layoffs, because I know Andang could tell you that I was on the verge of pretty much just forsaking everything and jumping the ship.
You were, and you were even getting me negative because of the amount of stuff that you had. It was ridiculous, and so, yeah, it can definitely happen to anyone, and you have to watch how much time you spend in certain places, I think, in order to make sure that you don't get completely swayed by things. I think you do need a variety of opinions in order to really form an opinion, but I don't think you need to, spend too much time in certain places, so...
I think generally it's just a good idea to take a break from anything that you spend a lot of time in, whether it be your job or a hobby that you do all the time or whatever, because it brings a fresh perspective. It brings a lot of things into perspective when you can take a few days off, take a few steps back, and realize what's really important and what's not.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. By the way, if you are looking for a fantastic SWOTOR podcast, UtiniCast is a great podcast. So be sure to check that out. It's fantastic.
I thought it was Punny's job to do that kind of stuff.
Yeah, well, Jawas are my field, so there you go.
Now we got over my slip-up.
Moderate Peril, real quick, sorry. Moderate Peril says, I run a support group and not a fan site.
I'm sure it feels like that sometimes.
Imagine. Right. get me off track again. Yeah, it's probably best to go back to the second question. I'll refresh it again for people who
suspect that if I've never gotten involved in the community in any way, I would still be running everything still, as opposed. Okay, I still do quite a bit of solo stuff, but I wouldn't have gotten involved in anything that's done in a group at all, I suspect.
Could you imagine what would happen if Pineleaf's skirmish guides were just solo guides for himself that he kept on his own computer? My goodness, that would be terrible. The community would be at a huge loss. We wouldn't even have a community. It would just all be gone because Pineleaf wouldn't have done his skirmish guides.
I think that's a little hyperbole, but okay.
I'm just sick of that word due to prior experience with it.
What, skirmish?
No, the other one.
Hyperbole?
Don't say it, you'll hurt Eeyore.
I'm not gonna try.
Okay. Continue.
Oh yeah. Drac.
I don't regret getting involved. The only thing I would do different, I guess I would kind of plan it out a little better, because it really was kind of an accident how I even got involved with this whole thing anyway. I was just kind of thrust into it, and it's just like, here I am, I'm in the community now. So I probably would have, thought about it a little more and decided if this is really what I wanted to do. But I mean, I love it, and I don't regret it at all. It just, I probably would have done it a little differently.
You're saying that some are born active, some achieve activeness, and some have activity thrust upon them?
Exactly. Like, you have such an elegant way with words, Python.
Pineleaf should just say all our thoughts on the podcast, and we just sit here.
Well, that's from Shakespeare, though.
Brexwolf.
I don't regret getting involved. I think if I was going to do anything differently, I honestly probably would have gotten involved a little bit sooner. I somewhat regret not contacting American Golden Star when they were doing CSTM, because I think I would have enjoyed writing some posts for their site. I was way too scared to do anything like that back in those days, and I didn't think I really had anything to offer. But now that I am on this side of the table, I can see that that would have been welcome. And now that I've spoken to them and kind of understand where they're coming from, that would have been a welcome thing for me to do. And what I've learned is just about everybody who plays this game has something to offer, whether they just started and noticed something new in the starter area or whatever it may be. So I guess that's kind of my encouragement to other people out there too. If you think you don't have anything to offer, but you want to get involved in something like LOTRO players, I encourage you to go ahead and contact us and at least tell us where you're at, and perhaps they're
off of CSTM by the time that I got involved, particularly the PvP writers. And if I wasn't involved with CSTM when I was involved with CSTM, then there's a good chance that I would not have been able to create LOTRO players. And you really can't think about how you can change the past, I think, because odds are that it would make the past so different that you wouldn't know where it's actually going. And so that's why I don't think I would get involved sooner, is my main thing. And also,
like a time traveler, not.
And also, if I had gotten involved sooner, then I probably wouldn't have been able to afford the subscription for too long and would have left LOTRO anyway. So it's definitely probably a good thing that I got involved when I did. It just all kind of worked itself out and accidentally became the head of LOTRO players. So there you go.
Okay, for me, I think the main thing is have less emphasis on the official forums, and that's sort of just like discussing changes and talking about that sort of thing, and more on the fan site area and creating content or guides and that sort of thing. Because, yeah, I mean, obviously I've mentioned earlier that the forums has kind of changed me a bit. The fan site part, I've actually has changed me even more in the positive direction than that. And the main thing for me is not even writing guides, it's just been talking to other members of the fan community. on a different basis than the forums where you're kind of at loggerheads more often than not. This is just kind of both talking about something you like, or even different creative works and that sort of thing. Definitely, I would recommend, even if you have the slightest inclination of making something or writing something, go for it. I would definitely recommend it.
Yeah.
Even if you're, because like I was terrified of people hearing my voice or even just seeing my text, it's more than worth the attempt, in my opinion, the risk. I know the one biggest, probably the most definite improvement it's given me is learning to use the keyboard hit skills instead of the mouse. Because before I got involved in the community, I always used my mouse to hit skills and then my keyboard to turn. I know from being involved on the through the Palantir podcast, Ivan, who is a pretty skilled PvPer, tried to give me a lot of help on that sort of thing. Yeah, it didn't work at the time, but I did eventually just grit my teeth and go for it, and it really did help. It improved me as a player, I like to think.
Thoros, you just opened the gate for a bunch more comments of people complaining about me clicking my skills with the mouse.
Okay, and that's it. That's it for everyone.
Yeah.
Okay, I won't forget the comments this time. Floatin's answer to this question is he just simply doesn't regret getting involved. If he can provide the information, that'll make life easier for others or bring a smile to their face. He's done his job. Which I think we can all kind of have that sort of opinion generally. Because I know me personally, I tend not to think much of myself in terms of humor value, unless I'm the person being laughed at. But I really don't mind it that much, as long as it's lighthearted and not haha, that person is an idiot kind of thing. Well, thanks for that silence.
What did you say? Sorry.
We were helping you with your humor.
Right.
Uncomfortable pause.
Thought you had enough of those. Moving on to the other response from Jason. He says, I have no regrets at all and would do it again without hesitation. What I do differently would be to place more focus on community building and more deliberate try to grow rather than relying on word of mouth. But then again, given time constraints, it's worked out such that things are manageable. And that's kind of what I think I was alluding to earlier. It's getting more involved in community building rather than community talking.
Yeah, community building is a whole another topic.
Yep.
That's one I have to think about. The final question for this topic is, would you recommend getting involved in the community to others? And if so, how would you recommend they do it? Brax, I suppose.
Yeah, kind of touched on this on the last question, but I would recommend it if you have an interest, any kind of interest, even a small interest. I think that the community benefits when more of the community participates. So I would definitely look to do that. The how part, yeah, here's my recommendation, and it's going to follow along with some of the conversation that we had earlier. I would not start with the forums. Again, I would look for a somewhat safer place. I would cite LOTRO Players as a fairly safe place, but there's probably others out there that are kind of smaller, more sheltered communities where you're not going to be jumped on and attacked if your opinion doesn't jive with the rest of the community. And that's just kind of the climate of different communities, right? I think you can probably look around and gauge fairly easily who's going to, have gentle suggestions and constructive criticism versus who's going to, try to look more intelligent than everybody else by jumping down your throat. I think you can see that in what's going on in that community. And I would pick a community that's, especially if you've never done this before, that's going to be a lot more forgiving, a place where you can kind of nurture and grow your skills of interacting with folks in this type of environment. So that would be my advice. Find somewhere that you're comfortable and somewhere that you can learn before actually stepping out there into something as shark infested as certain forums that are out there.
Mm-hmm. I think PK Crichton 5. It's an interesting name. He says, my main suggestions would be, other than when talking over beta or suggestions, he says to avoid the forum and instead take to the community sites, as they are much more open and welcoming for information. Which is, very similar to what you just said, and I can kind of agree with that too.
Yeah.
It's just a lot easier and softer springboard to get into the community than the forums.
Carl in the chat asks, can you name an example of one other than LOTRO players? For me personally, aside from Tales of Arda, which is no longer going, I can't think of any other LOTRO site that I can think of, honestly. I mean, I would love for people to point it out. Like, email us in if you know of a great LOTRO site. We'd love to hear about it. I mean, there's several cosmetic blogs and things like that, but as far as just general LOTRO stuff, I don't know.
I can't.
Yeah, I agree. I think that there's not LOTRO specific, but I've found some of the gaming blogging community to be fairly welcoming too.
Yeah.
Not everybody, but some have been.
In general, the blogging community is pretty good in gaming, as long as you know what you're getting into.
And I think those who are interested in role-playing and such should look for Lorelin Archives, which is fan site as well, which is quite popular for the role players. So I would recommend that instead of going to look for advice on the forums. They could have a look there. I think because there's much, information and the stories, and so that's a good site actually.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay, Panif.
As for whether or not I would recommend getting involved in anything, I would first suggest, is there anything in the game that specifically interests you, especially if it's a niche that you think isn't covered as well as you wished or anything like that? For example, back when I got started involving, skirmishes were rather poorly covered at the time. I was trying to get into a blog at first and trying to do one, and frankly, it didn't really work all that well because, it didn't seem like it was adding anything until I started coming up with the idea of starting to make it working on the skirmish theme. And before that point, there was nothing, let's say, interesting about it. So that would be my recommendation, is see what interests you within the game. And is there something that you see in there that you might think would be a bit, for example,
if you are interested in this sort of getting into the community. Drac.
Yeah, I would say if you think you want to get involved, do it. Get involved, and to the gaming blogging nexus, just go to Blogspot and start a blog or WordPress or anywhere, and I would just start that way. Just start small, and then see, kind of grow it, and you'll probably get more involved as it goes on, and then maybe you'll get onto LOTRO players or some other site. And
yeah, I think that's actually a good point you're making there, is that I think a number of blogs or podcasts and such have moved over to our site in, I think the first few months of us existing. I think people just like having a unified place for all sorts of a LOTRO community to build, and it's a lot easier to have a stronger foundation there than it is individual blogs spread out across the internet.
Yeah, every single site that joined up with LOTRO players has been getting better traffic than what they were before. So that's definitely, it's amazed me. It's just the fact that, all these niche LOTRO people got together and created a site where they each talked about their own good thing, and I think that's been a real big strength.
Is everyone else gone? I can't remember.
I don't think I've gone. I think first you need to get involved with people in the game before you go out into the community, in my opinion at least. Not everyone agrees with that, obviously,
Yes.
but I think if you get involved with people in the game and you realize how much fun you can have with that, then you get more interested to look out into other places like the LOTRO players or the small the small other LOTRO sites or the cosmetic blogs or anything like that. And I think it all starts with the people you meet in the game that can keep you there and keep you interested. And then you can find other ways to keep you interested as well on top of that.
Yes.
Yeah, I think for me, I think a really big point of advice I would give is make sure you actually are excited about and you enjoy, you're actually interested in what you want to write or talk about. Because I can think of a fair few sites or blogs and stuff that started for a particular subject, but they end up even like very quickly become disinterested, or they just outright dislike it, and then that ends up falling apart and all that effort goes to waste. You need to make sure actually invested in that subject or that game before you actually go in and make the effort.
Yeah, and also make sure you have a backlog of content before you start, I think anyway. Because then you can, if you don't want to write one day, you don't have to worry about not writing that one day. Whereas sometimes when you create a site, it feels like that you have to continually make content, but you don't have to. You can just do it on your own time, and don't try to, get over involved too quickly, I think is a big thing.
I think the other point of advice I would give is don't be afraid of people criticizing you. I know I certainly would make me a massive hypocrite, because when I first started out appearing on podcasts, especially through the Palantir and Fellowship of the Creeps, I was terrified of someone saying, "Oh, that guy has a really annoying voice, don't have him on," or anything like that. That would have broken me at the beginning, because that's how self-conscious I would have been about having my voice be on the internet.
Yeah. You reminded me of something on my YouTube channel, is that one of my very early YouTube posts, it's one with the Lore Master, I believe it's the Lore Master Mounted Combat Lesson one. It has more posts, I think, than many of the other one in responses, and it all started because someone says you sound like a robot. I eventually re-listened to that one a couple of months ago, and I do sound like a robot in that one.
Yeah, looking back on my early videos, I'll tell you what, it's terrible. And that doesn't even include the ones that I got rid of. So it's really bad looking back on some of those early videos. But that's part of the thing, is you have to, at the time you think it's really great content because it is for what you've done before that. And you just gradually build up, and then eventually over time you create a lot higher quality content because, well, experience is everything in creating content, I think. But you have to start somewhere. And so, start out doing, just doing it for fun, and then, don't worry about what happens after that. Just do it for fun and enjoy what you're doing.
Yeah, that's the main thing. As long as you enjoy what you're doing, what everyone else thinks, it's not, you shouldn't care, but it's not nearly as important as what you think about it.
Mm-hmm.
And I know I'm thinking or feeling, and I know that most people will be okay with it, or at least irrelevant, or ambivalent about it.
Yeah, and part of it is you've done enough episodes now to where people know you and understand where you're coming from and things like that. So it isn't, you can give a lot more real opinion because you're not worried about, people already know where you stand on a lot of things, and so that allows you to go a little bit further, I think.
Yeah, and it shows I'm apparently okay with rambling because I've done it like 3 times this episode. So, assuming no one else has anything to add on this question, we'll get into the final responses from the emails. Okay. Flossin's final response here is, he says to start off small as far as contributing and see how it goes. Try not to take negative things to heart. There are people out there that you just can't please no matter what. As his parents would say, if you can't say something nice or constructive, then don't say anything. Which is, yeah, I think we all pretty much agreed on just there. I mean, you want to accept criticism to a point, because at least if you can see they're trying to help you grow. But if they're just trying to beat you down, then really you don't want to let them do that, even remotely. If you give ground even slightly, it's going to eventually just knock you straight down. Jason's final response here is another large paragraph, and there's also PSs, so that's going to be a long thing, getting involved in one's gaming community without hesitation. But care must be taken to find the right kind of community. Don't give up after an initial bad experience with a guild or kinship. Try again. For fan sites and forums, watch for a while to get a feeling for who the people are behind each community and their attitudes towards the game and in general. If you feel that it's a good match for you, then dive in. But I'd say always avoid groups that are rife with negativity, such as any game's general forums tend to be. That way lies madness. LOTRO is blessed with a mature, generally positive and optimistic community. It shouldn't be too hard to find somewhere to call home. Cheers, Jason.
Yeah, Thanks, Jason, for writing into us. That's awesome, especially considering that you actually are a podcaster. It's great to hear from someone who's involved in creating communities. That's fantastic.
Mm-hmm. And I can pretty much agree with most everything he said, too.
Mm-hmm.
And there are 2 PPSs, or PSs, I should say. The first one is, yes, I've listened since episode 1. You're my primary source of it. Mm-hmm. And the second one is, please plug Brax's Beyond Boss Fights podcast. It is excellent.
It's not only excellent, it is the most amazing thing ever. Not only did he have Golden Star on the show, also Merrick and myself. So, I mean, how much better can you get than those 3 key characters from CSTM? I mean, Beyond Boss Fights is absolutely amazing. Go and listen to it now. It's fantastic. Was that a good enough plug, Brax?
It is on iTunes as well as Stitcher. So go ahead and leave some feedback once you listen to it, and that would help me out immensely. Thank you. And thanks for the kind words, Jason. I do appreciate that.
Mm-hmm. You can take over, Pineleaf.
First of all, thank you so much, Athelros. That was, I think, our best, by far, discussion that we've had on these discussion questions, and they keep getting better and better each week. So thank you so much, Athelros, for coming up with these questions. They're great.
Well, yeah, thanks.
Yes, a very extensive and thorough. that was about main topic length.
That's just
respecting a little sidetrack here. It was main topic length instead.
Just trying to say we spent ages on that topic.
Yes, we'll head into donations then. This week we did not receive any donations. Aww. But we would love to have your support. To help support local players, simply go to the donations page where you can help.
Actually, you do get one on Through the Palantir, but
yeah,
just not.
Yeah.
You won't get one on Teeny Cast, that's for sure.
Yeah, right. You won't get one on Teeny Cast. Thank you for coming up with one that would be a good example. Let's get to our feedback then. We did not receive any reviews this week through iTunes.
Oh.
So therefore, we'll come to our featured comment. Redalas left a comment on episode 38. Be sure to listen to the very end. There's a very touching farewell to White Mary of Tales of Arda.
Yeah, we did have a really things. Try to listen to the podcast part of that. It's right before the ending song there, and before the bloopers. So it's at the very, very end.
Very well. Taltos also left a comment on episode 38. A new class is great, but will Turbine increase the number of character slots available to us, or will we be saying goodbye to one of our existing tunes? What do you mean? You don't have an extra empty character slot?
I think that's what he's saying. What do you think? Will there be more character slots?
From what I heard,
you're not,
the devs...
I doubt.
I'm sorry.
I strongly doubt that they'd be giving us a free one. So,
well, definitely not free.
I did hear about a dev, or maybe it was one of the store manager people talking about asking players how many character slots they would actually like to be able to buy, and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So I would think they might do that.
Which would be a nice gesture.
But you mean increase the number that are available? Yes, that's possible. Of course, right now, we have. Well, if you're a VIP, you can have as many as 17, just the number I have. And 17 is, and I believe that even if you are a free-to-play person who does not have Moria, you could still have. I think you could have 15 if you buy the two that would come with Moria. But I think at the very least you would have, or no, maybe not. Let's see. At the very least, you'd have 13 available.
That's right, yeah.
And that's enough to cover all the classes, including the new one. Unless you're like me and have lots of wardens.
What are the chances that they come out with a new class but then charge you to use the new class? If you're not VIP.
Well, they charged for the Runekeeper and for the Warden, so...
Right.
We'll have to pay for it, definitely.
In some way we will.
I think
yes,
they
definitely
might
class.
make it free for VIPs, because that's kind of the trend they've been going for this year. So I think that's a possibility. But yeah, free and premiums are definitely buying it, straight up.
So they're going to, just for this premium player on this end, they're going to charge for the new class, they're going to charge for the new areas, they're going to charge for a new character slot?
Yeah.
I would think so.
Yeah, that would be my guess.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, if they're going to spend that much time on developing a class, I think it's definitely worth charging for. If you're going to have, they said they had, 2 employees working on that from the chat there, that was like their main task, was doing the new class. That means that's, salaries that you're paying for probably a year, and then the amount of time it'll take to maintain and balance and do all that stuff. That's a lot of money that they're spending on a new class, so I think they definitely have to charge for it.
Right. I think it's going to be very interesting, once again, to keep track of, for non-VIP players, how much money they're going to charge for all of the updates they make over the course of 2014, and compare that to how much they would have charged for an expansion pack in 2013, plus the major update that they did.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, but you got to remember is that last year they also charged for...
They charged for Wildermore.
For Wildermore.
Yeah, they did. It was $10, I think. 995 turbine points.
Yep.
Right, so that when you compute how much it would have cost there, you'd need to take that into account also.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. That plus the expansion. But those are the only 2 things that a non-VIP really had to pay for that came out last year.
Yep.
All right, then. Let us see. Bango left a comment on episode 38. Nice podcast. Or is it a YouTube cast? First time I've listened to it. Looking forward to episode 39.
It's both, and thank you very much.
Very well, then. How about Sulo left a comment for episode 37, and we'll leave that to Brax.
Give him the long one.
Yeah.
Great discussions this episode. Pineleaf, I wanted to thank you in particular for sharing your thoughts on the Mirkwood epilogue. Previously, I had lamented the fact that the epilogue was not soloable. However, your comments on the epic story being a sampler of the game as a whole have given me a little more perspective as to why the 6-man was left as is. From a marketing/selling the game perspective, this decision...
Trying to make it soloable. That sounds like something that would be tough to do. It's sort of like taking the Great Barrows and giving you a solo option for that.
Yeah.
I don't know what other people's opinion on that matter.
This is going back to what we were talking about before, but on the new class idea and the charges for it, they did mention that VIPs, I don't remember the exact statement, but they mentioned...
VIP. You know how they lock your character slots if you have too many?
Yeah.
They could do.
That would be
right.
mean.
And that that intricate problem is the one reason why I think it would be... Why it sounds like it's unlikely to be free to VIPs. I have a feeling they're not thinking of that when they were thinking of content.
Probably not, considering that they hadn't announced that at the time. That was going to be this year, so... Yeah, I don't know.
We will have to find out when it happens and when they announce who gets what. With a series of what appears to be limericks concerning her current situation. Lady Kate Throat is as rough as a hairy goat, so she won't be able to make it to the podcast. She begs to be excused, does not want to be rude. Pineleaf, don't read this too fast.
Pregnant pause.
So for questions today, we chat about community play, something Lily Kate believes strongly about. But avoid like the plague the negative LOTRO forums, tirades, anding, and Pineleaf's YouTube playthroughs have more clout. Actually, I am trying to figure out the format of these poems. It's definitely not limerick, so I have to come up, because it is a rather unusual scheme there.
I think you're meant to be saying it in a South London accent.
Now
Yes,
you have to start
unfortunately,
over.
I don't have a very good South London accent.
I think more mid-London, really.
You've taken me out of the mood. You got to start all the way over again.
That's
Yes.
right.
Yeah.
South or
I agree.
mid-London accent, Pineleaf. That's what we want.
I don't know a proper South London accent. Or South London accent, I guess, as Lily Kate will say.
Lily Kate said
I don't-
soft London.
Soft London. Oh, that's right. Soft London accent.
So,
Yes.
I think she wants you to read it that way, according to the chat.
How am I going to read it in an accent I don't know how to read?
I don't know how to do it either. That's why
I don't know,
talked to
just,
you.
read it.
Just Van
All right.
Dyke and Mary
Oh,
Poppins.
We'll try this. Okay, we'll try this one more time then. Like Dick Van Dyke and Mary Poppins. Lily Kate's throat is as rough as a hairy goat, so she won't be able to make it to podcast. She begs to be excused, does not want to be rude. Kindly, don't read this too fast. So for questions today, we chat about community play, something Lily Kate believes strongly about. But avoid like the plague the negative LOTRO forums tirades. Andang and Pineleaf's YouTube playthroughs have more clout. So while you are missing me today, you better be missing me. I send salutations your way and may look to find me in chat, if not to think of me snoring so very loudly when you're all debating the U13 changes to stats. Because and Lurgy, Lily Kate Buggins.
More moderate perils. More moderate peril from the chat says, "Where in South London was that?"
You have to read it again, Pineleaf.
Lily said you were too posh.
You have to do it again.
Yeah.
Less posh.
I think it's one poem is enough.
I think it was enough the first time, let alone the posh time.
Oh, well. That was, okay, too posh. What did you expect?
There's a show title.
Very well. You can contact us. First, you can email us at lotraplayers.middleearth@gmail.com. Please, if you send a poem, do not expect me to say it in a proper accent. And you can also follow us and our guests at Twitter, Acacia at Acacia_S, and Lotro Players at Lotro Players, Andang at PVMP_Andang, Braxwolf at Braxwolf, Draculetta at Draculetta_72, Etheros at Eeyore Etheros.
That's Eeyore, honey.
And he did change his Twitter.
I did. Krell can tell you that.
Your Etheros, all right. Lily Kate at Lily Kate Buggins. Mystery at Mystery XOX, and that's with an I, not with a Y. And Pineleaf at Pineleaf Needle. You could join us live first at Lotro Players Adventures, which goes live every Saturday at 5 p.m. server time, and Lotro Players News, which goes live every Saturday at 8:30 p.m. server time, and those are in United States Eastern Time. And note that the United States is currently in daylight savings time, and I believe most of Europe doesn't start until next week. You can join us by going to LotroPlayers.com/live and be sure to join us in the YouTube chat. And thanks for watching, for that is all for tonight. So until next time, this is Pine Leaf Needles. And remember to skirmish responsibly.